I had no idea the British press was so bigoted.
This one's wife. Just when you thought it was over. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Those of you that listen to my other work, and if you haven't, I really would encourage you to do so. There's a lot more interesting material all about narcissism and psychopathy beyond this one's wife. Plenty of famous people have been analysed at the moment. I'm considering the status of J.K. Rowling, the famous author. You can catch that series, which is ongoing. And there are lots and lots, thousands of videos about narcissism itself. And one of the aspects of narcissism that I have explained to people is that it's never over until you've died. I don't say that to suggest that the narcissist is intent on killing you, but I'm talking about the issue of finality. Many people, for instance, talk about the concept of a final discard. There is no such thing. Watch my video about that very topic. The narcissist may disengage from you, but you remain subconsciously the property of the narcissist, and the narcissist has an inalienable right to return and exercise their control over you to extract fuel from you, character traits and residual benefits. Some people think that they have caused the narcissist to run away and to stay away. For instance, they will say to me, HG, I exposed the narcissist. I've not heard from him in weeks. He'll never approach me again. Not correct. Or, I gave his ass a good whooping. He'll stay away forever. Nope. There is always, repeat, always a risk of a hoover, because there is always a risk that you will come up on the radar of the narcissist in some way. Even if you have implemented a total no-contact regime, there's still a risk that the narcissist will be reminded of you by something or someone, or simply think about you. And when that happens, the narcissism has to determine whether control has been obtained over you. And in such circumstances, it will invariably have no data, and therefore the assumption is you are not under control, and therefore the narcissism has to obey the first rule of narcissism. All appliances must be brought under control and kept under control at all times. This is why this one's wife incessantly returns to Instagram. Something will pop into her head, and this will cause her narcissism to conclude this person is not under control. We need to bring them under control. What's the easiest way of doing so? Get onto Instagram, issue a clap back, post something about the children, post some flowers, post some vegetables, and thus she keeps on doing it. In the same way, you run the risk of coming back on the radar of the narcissist, and therefore, although it's not guaranteed you'll be hoovered, it increases the risk that you will. You can never say never when it comes to the narcissist. And this is applicable to this one's wife. You might have thought that her execrable podcast series, Confessions of a Female Founder, which told you the square root of fuck all in relation to business and just utilised this one's wife talking about motherhood and children as a deflection from the fact that she knows niente, nada, nout about business, was finally concluded. That the last episode came out earlier this week, talking to the lady who created Spanx. You might have thought, well, I didn't waste any time listening to any of that beige shite, but at least it's done and dusted, and I can now go about my life free in the knowledge that I'm not going to be plagued by the possibility of hearing this one's wife's excruciating, breathy word salad and vocal fry, at least for a few weeks. Well, in the same way that you thought it was safe to go back into the water, but Jaws 2 came along, this one's wife, shark-like, has reappeared between the waters and tells us this.
Next week, we've got one more very special interview for you. A bonus episode, because when a matriarch calls and when this matriarch calls, oh, you answer.
That's why I fight so hard. Now, I tell them every day, you belong anywhere. I mean, since they were little girls, you belong anywhere you choose to be.
Can you guess who it is? This one is so special, y'all. I'll see you next week.
Yes, I hear you all, Tudorites, running from your rooms, screaming at the knowledge that this one's wife has not yet disappeared with her ridiculous podcast series. Just when you thought it was over, along she comes again with a bonus episode. No, you cry, make it stop, kill it, burn it with fire. Once again, those false breathy tones of this one's wife are deployed in order to try and seduce you into listening to the podcast, because very few people actually are. And this time, she wheels out a surprise special guest whose identity is hidden from you. Now, I may be wrong about this, but I think it sounds like Tina Knowles, Beyonce's mother. And hey, according to this one's wife, when the matriarch calls, you listen. Right. I stand to be corrected, but I'm not fully familiar with the business that Tina Knowles has established. I wasn't aware that she was a titan of industry, a captain of business, sailing the seas of commerce with her long-lasting enterprise. I understood that she's got a very famous daughter and a less famous one, and it's likely that her success financially is probably as a consequence of the generosity of Beyonce, who's a very wealthy woman. I'm intrigued for a picosecond as to quite what she will have to tell us about business. But this one's wife thinks that she's got an exclusive as she brings along Tina Knowles, if my suspicion is correct, who comes out with the memorable observation, telling young girls you belong anywhere you choose to be. Yes, well, that's a rather narcissistic approach to life, isn't it? You belong anywhere you choose to be. Hello, I choose to be in your husband's bed with him. Hey, I belong here because I chose to be here. Hello, I choose to be inside this exclusive club. Therefore, I belong here. What? I don't have a membership. That doesn't matter. I belong here. Hello, you don't mind me taking some food out of your fridge? I choose to be here, so I belong anywhere. Yeah. Lack of boundary recognition, sense of entitlement, absence of accountability. The mindset of someone narcissistic, I would suggest. But she's not under scrutiny under the Tudor scope. Instead, unfortunately, valuable viewers, you are going to be potentially plagued by yet another episode of this one's wife's awful series. Now, was this recorded and originally decided that wasn't going to be used, and because the series has been so bollocks, she tried to squeeze a little bit more out of Lemonada? Or is it the case this was the intention all along, and instead of including it in the usual episodes, they've decided to make it seem like a bonus episode? I think you'd have to travel far and wide to find anybody that would think this was a bonus, launching this at the unsuspecting public, that just when you thought that her shite podcast series was over, she comes back once again with another episode. I won't be listening. I might look at what the coverage says about it to see what we can understand more about the nonsense that this one's wife comes out with, but undoubtedly she'll engage in mirroring, not talking about business, and squeezing in talking about her. Even if Tina Knowles had some interesting insights about business, we're not going to hear them because this one's wife just wants to talk about herself, because her narcissistic mind tells her that's what matters. I make it plain. The only relief you get from the narcissist, ultimately, completely, is when you've shuffled off this mortal coil. Because even when the narcissist dies, the narcissist might take steps to hoover you from beyond the grave. Although, naturally, the imposition of a total no-contact regime usually brings you peace, but that doesn't mean that the narcissist is stopped from trying to hoover you. You just don't get to hear about it because you've applied the principles of my work to make your no-contact regime the best it can be. I think it won't be too long before people start imposing a no-contact regime against this one's wife. One suspects that many people have had enough of her by now, that all they're really waiting for is either her to run out of money or get divorced. In the meantime, it seems to be very much rinse and repeat. Take to Instagram, make an appearance somewhere, wear inappropriate clothing in some shape or form, talk nonsense, be scrutinised, and then it happens a few days later or a couple of weeks later. There's nothing new. There's no grand exposure, as I have explained to you why that won't be the case. And one senses there's a considerable fatigue in relation to this one's wife, because what you're seeing now is her bumping along the bottom of the barrel, scraping it regularly because she has nothing to offer and there are no real major revelations about her. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.